Well, hello there. This is Worldview. This video should be labeled Worldview Week 2, Day 2. So, hopefully by now you've watched the Day 1, Week 2, Day 1 video. And we're continuing in Ecclesiastes, but it's not, what I'm going to do today is not directly out of the book of Ecclesiastes. These are more of my observations on kind of life in general. Now, as I pointed out, in the book of Ecclesiastes, Solomon switches rapidly and without warning between one worldview and another. So sometimes, occasionally, he's looking at things and examining reality from the right point of view. Sometimes he's looking at reality from what you call kind of an agnostic point of view, where you think there might be a God out there and there might be a point to life, but who can really say for sure? So sometimes Solomon takes that point of view in the book of Ecclesiastes, and sometimes he just takes a real blunt, kind of almost atheistic point of view, where he just says it's all vanity, it's a waste of time, nothing means nothing. And that got me to thinking, in today's modern, very complicated world, are those the only three possible worldviews out there? And I came up with several here. I've got 7. And I wanted to show you, rather than me just talking about it, I came up with some, these are called like graphic organizers, right? And you use these a lot in college. If you take a sociology class or a psychology class, these sorts of things will be very familiar to you. Right now you may not have seen them, and so I wanted to go through each of these. I've made a blown up version of each, and I wanted to talk about these a little bit. Okay, so like I said, I have identified 7 worldviews, and these are all out there, and these are the sorts of ways of thinking that you can fall into. Only one of them is truly good. The rest are wrong, but some are more wrong than others. Okay, so I'm going to kind of go through all 7, and then I'm going to take an actual issue that people are dealing with these days, and then I'm going to look at how each worldview would handle that question. Okay, so the first one is, of course, the only completely right one, and that's the Christian worldview. Okay, so hopefully that shows up pretty well from where you are. Okay, so Christian worldview, and notice that in this picture you've got God, myself, and Scripture. Okay, so the most important thing about the Christian worldview is that the person and God are together. They're not separated from one another. God's primary way of speaking to us is through Scripture, but He's not limited to that in the Christian worldview. He can talk to you through a dream. He can talk to you through the advice of a good friend. He can talk to you through a movie that's not even a Christian movie, but if a character happens to say something that's profound or true, maybe that's God's way of getting your attention. But generally speaking, the Christian worldview, you've got God, yourself, and Scripture, and notice that they're all together, and the arrows pointing outward means that that's how you're looking at things. You're looking at reality all around you, and you're judging stuff. Okay, there's no way to get around that. Adults have to judge things. They judge ideas as true or false. They judge people as honest or dishonest. They judge paintings as beautiful or eh. Okay, we judge things all day long. Okay, so get used to that. That's part of being a grown-up. So the Christian worldview, the most important thing is that God and the person are together. And God is helping the person, you, hopefully, look at the world around you and evaluate things and to judge them the right way. Okay? So that is, now technically, King Solomon was not a Christian since Jesus hadn't been born yet. But in terms of being a faithful Old Testament Hebrew believer, there are times in the book of Ecclesiastes when Solomon gets it right. So he basically has a Christian worldview. And if we have any doubts about Solomon and we read the book of Proverbs, it's filled with awesome things in it. Proverbs is one of the, well, we're gonna go through Proverbs in this fourth quarter of the school year. Okay, now here's the second worldview, and these days this one's actually more common than the Christian worldview, and that's the humanistic worldview. All right, so you've got, notice who's at the center of everything. It's myself. Okay, so myself and science, the humanistic worldview. The humanistic worldview says if anybody is going to make the human situation better, it's going to be humans. Because the human consciousness, the human mind, is the greatest power in the world that we know of, and therefore the problems that humanity faces, humans will have to solve those problems. Okay, so the humanistic worldview says that with myself and with science, notice that I'm judging reality again. I'm trying to figure out what it all means. Notice that God may or may not be included. It says God ? Some humanists would consider themselves Christian humanists. Okay. But since there's that question mark there, that means maybe God's not the most important question. In other words, he may be there, he may not be there, but at any rate, he's not telling us really what to do, so I guess we humans will have to figure it out for ourselves. Okay, so again, humanistic worldview. It's myself, it's science together. God may be out there in the world helping us somehow. We're not really sure how, so maybe we shouldn't worry about him too much, because we got to deal with reality as it is. We got to figure it out and deal with it. All right, so the humanistic worldview. This may be you. Some of my students may basically take that point of view. I hope not, but like I said, it's very common these days. All right, now here is one that's very similar to the humanistic worldview, but it's obviously edgier. This is the atheistic worldview. Okay, and notice that out here, God has a big X. So the atheist has made a decisive, act. He's basically said, I'm not even going to entertain the possibility that God is out there. He just doesn't exist. So that means that I myself and whatever makes my life better. Okay? What did I put exactly? Yeah, so whatever benefits myself and myself. And if I figure out what is most beneficial to me, and I look at the world around me, and I consider the big decisions that I have to make, then that's gonna determine how I deal with reality all the time. Now, I've actually heard atheists say, there's a famous atheist philosopher, and she wrote novels too. She wrote philosophy books and novels, and she really was a brilliant person. Is a woman from Russia. Her American name was Ayn Rand. So A-Y-N, Ayn Rand, R-A-N-D. She took her name after a brand of typewriter that she used. I think her Russian Jewish name was Alice Rosenbaum, I believe. And she said she was a strict atheist. She thought if you believed in God, you were an absolute idiot. Okay, she was very aggressive about that. But she said that you can actually produce a good and moral country where people get along if everybody pursues their own self-interest. If everybody just does what they know is best for themselves, if everyone does that, then you'll actually have harmony, because it's best for me if I learn to get along with the people around me. So she actually wrote a book called The Virtue of Selfishness. All right. So some atheists are going to take that kind of point of view. Others are just going to be, I do whatever I want, and as long as I get away with it, it's good. I don't care if it makes harmony in society or not. Who cares? All right. So that's another worldview, a very popular one. If you doubt that, watch YouTube videos and you'll see all the edgy atheists out there. All right. Now this one is particularly dangerous because it sounds so nice. Okay. This is the religious worldview. Notice that you've got very different, because the arrows are going in the opposite direction, aren't they? So notice that God and reality are in the bubble together, but I'm outside of it. And I'm looking in, trying to figure out the secrets of what God is actually like. Now, after thinking about this one a little bit more, I would probably add the word myself and books. Okay? So the religious worldview has people who will be very, very busy studying the religions of the world and the big ideas that are out there about how science and religion might intersect with one another, and all these clever things about how technology is going to do this, that, or the other thing. And religious people, and that's not a compliment, okay? I don't use the word religious to compliment someone. These people can be very busy, and they look like they're very devout and that they have a strong sense of the point of life, when in fact they might spend their whole life looking at God and reality from 17 different ways, and they never really figure it out. Lots of people like that out there. They're basically making up their own religion, and they're always wrong, and they keep kind of tweaking their view until they find something that finally makes them happy. All right, so that's, I'm going to add the word books here. Okay, so that's the religious worldview, a very common one. You'll run into that one a lot when you go to college. All right. Next one, pluralistic. To say that something's plural means that there's more than one, right? So a pluralistic worldview says that you can have lots of different worldviews all in the same place, and each separate group of people is entitled to their own reality, so they can do their own thing. So you can have a conservative political reality, you could have a Muslim reality. Go to any big city in America and you're going to find a big group of Muslims there. A Christian reality, a LGBTQ reality, marching around in gay pride parades wearing a Speedo. If you think there's anything wrong with that, you're just a hater. You just hate people if you think that's wrong. Okay, then you got Jewish reality, and then you got liberal reality. And notice that each of these groups has its own view of things, and they're judging everybody around them, and they're all bumping into each other. So this situation is very familiar if you live in a place like Los Angeles, where I grew up, or Chicago, New York, Paris, London. That pluralistic, cosmopolitan, city-based worldview, and that's a reality for much of the world. Do people actually like it, though? I'm not convinced that they do. All right, now the next one. We haven't really talked about this one yet because I haven't done my section on Hinduism and Buddhism yet, and I will. Okay, this is the Eastern worldview. This one, again, is very different because notice that you've got a box. It's a sealed box. You got myself, and I've got a world full of illusions and non-reality. So the Eastern worldview, whether you're a Hindu or a Buddhist, teaches that the things that normal people like and spend their time doing, that those normal things are an illusion. They're like vapor. They don't really matter. And if you want to find true reality, you have to look outside the world to find it. Okay? So you can believe in God. Notice I've got quotes around that because they get to define God lots of different ways. Or you've got small g gods, or you've got some kind of hidden reality that's outside of the world, and you have to discover it for yourself. All right, so that's the Eastern worldview. It's a very interesting thing to study, and so I enjoy teaching about the Hindus and the Buddhists. But this worldview is so different from an American's, whether a Christian American or non-Christian, doesn't really matter. Americans just don't get this one. We don't like it. And you'll see why a little more clearly after I teach on this stuff. Okay, now this one, I don't want this one to get anybody worked up, but I gotta say it anyway. This is what I call Team America, okay? And notice that you've got at the center of everything, you've got God. God. And notice that God is on the flag. That's a flag, by the way. All right. So you got God, you got guns, and you got guts. And if you've got God, and you've got guns, and you got guts, then you're ready, man. You can judge the whole world. You can, whatever you see, you'll have the wisdom to separate friends from enemies. Because that's the most important thing to Team America. You got to know who's on your side. back during the I guess it was the first Gulf War or the second one? I can't remember. Uh, France didn't want to send any troops over there to help America fight, and so people were actually renaming French fries. They called them freedom fries because to call them French fries is an insult to potatoes, right? Got to give them a better name. All right, so Team America, and this one can easily be a counterfeit for the Christian worldview. It's very dangerous. Okay, so God and God are not the same person. They're not. Okay, and I'm not. Look, I'm not from the South, unless you count uh, South California as the South. But look, this is not. I'm not picking on the South. I'm not. I live here. Okay, you're going to find this at all sorts of places in America. If you go to Wyoming, everybody thinks this way, right? And that's up north. It snows 9 months of the year up there. All right. If you go to North Dakota, if you go to Idaho, lots of places out of the way places like that, people think just like this. Okay. So again, I'm not picking on anybody in particular. So now, with that in mind, I've gone through all of the different worldviews. Now I wanted to look at kind of a hot topic these days. It's not as big a deal now. 8 years ago or so, it would have been more. But this still is an issue, and that's the issue of, should we legalize marijuana and other drugs? There aren't very many people that would argue that we should legalize meth or crack cocaine or something. Not many people are willing to go that far. Some are, but not very many. So I wanted to keep it more on the level of legalizing marijuana. All right, so from the Christian worldview, I'm not saying that all Christians are going to agree with me. I am not saying that. But the Christian worldview at least tries to wrestle with the question, what does God think about legalizing a drug that does damage a person's ability to think and to get work done over time? Yes, alcohol fits into that category too, and it was a disaster when America tried to make alcohol illegal. We all know that didn't work. And so the question, should marijuana be legalized? And I've taught a lesson on this. My view is no, it shouldn't be, especially because so many young people are getting their hands on it. And by young, I mean people under 15. And teaching at Chamberlain Hunt, I had lots of kids there who started smoking weed when they were like 12. And I saw what it did to them. And so at least you got to wrestle with what Scripture says about drunkenness and other things, and take that seriously. All right, now the second one, the humanistic worldview in the question of should we, legalize marijuana. Notice that there's a slight change here. The humanist is generally going to say science shows that if people smoke marijuana at too young of an age, it can cause certain types of brain damage that may take years for that person to grow out of. And therefore, marijuana should not be allowed to anyone under, say, 15 or 16. And furthermore, it shouldn't even be legal until you're 21. But notice that the humanistic point of view leaves God out of it entirely. And it's just looking at science. What does science say about the effect of marijuana on the brain and on the body? And it's also going to ask, what does the use of marijuana do for the whole society if everybody's getting high 5 nights a week? So a humanist might actually consider that question too. All right, but their certainty is going to be a lot less, because some humanists would say, I don't know, I just can't see us making a big deal out of it because science says that it won't kill you, and as long as people aren't driving around after using it, then it's not that big a deal, because they don't have to worry about the human soul, because that's not really their way of looking at things. All right, now the atheistic worldview. An atheist might personally decide, I don't want to smoke weed because I feel that it makes me dumb, or it makes me lazy, or it makes me eat too many Cheez-Its or something. But notice that those are selfish reasons. That's just self-interest. So that this kind of person might say, I'm not smoking weed because I don't want to look dumb, or I don't want to get dumb, or I don't want to get fat, or I don't want to wreck my car. But they're not worried about what God has to think, because they don't believe in God. And they're not really worried about what other people do, because what other people do is up to other people. And that's it. Okay, so the atheistic view would tend, most atheists would say, yeah, you can legalize weed, so what? All right, now the religious worldview, that's an interesting one, because remember, I'm outside the circle in this one, so I've got to figure out what's right. What does God, in this vague sense, what does God think about marijuana? And they might say something like, well, God made everything and made marijuana. Alcohol actually kind of occurs naturally. If you put a jug of grape juice outside, yeast that's in the atmosphere will come along and sort of turn it into alcohol. And so I don't know, maybe marijuana's okay. Maybe some people can responsibly use small amounts of drugs, and it might actually give them some insights into reality, and maybe understand God in their own way, in a way that makes sense to them. Perhaps marijuana will help them. Okay. Now the pluralistic reality, notice how chaotic that is, because some of these subgroups down here would be okay with it. Liberals don't care about marijuana. LGBTQ people don't care if you use it or not. Liberals don't care. Muslims do. Muslims are strictly against intoxicating things. But Muslims are also against alcohol. All right, so that would contradict with everyone else's. But notice that marijuana is not the main issue here. What you've got here is just the bigger issue is, how do all these competing and conflicting groups get along in the same place? All right, so that one, the marijuana thing, that probably doesn't matter too much in that context. The Eastern worldview, says that any activity that keeps your heart and mind stuck here in this world, that's bad. So in other words, if you're just thinking about the next time you can get high, that's your mind stuck on something that's part of this unreal world, this world of illusions. And if you want to be free of this big box prison here that we live in, if you want to be free of that, you have to stop focusing on the pleasures of life. Okay, so the Eastern mindset says that if you want to be free, you have to do away with your addiction to pleasures of the eyes, pleasures of tasting, food, pleasures of the ear, listening to music, pleasures of the nose, smelling, perfume or whatever, and of course of touch. And so also getting a major buzz going, all right, that's a form of pleasure. So the Eastern mindset would say, don't do that. Eat simple food, don't get high, don't drink alcohol, don't smoke cigarettes, don't do anything that attaches you to the decaying, unreal stuff that's in our world. You want to get out of this place and get up here to where reality actually is. Okay. Now the last one, Team America. This is interesting. Team America, I have found people here don't give a rip if you want to get high. They just don't. They may choose personally not to. That's one thing that's changed since I was your age. Okay, so I'm 54 years old. I was 18 in 1983 is when I turned 18. And back then, Team America was against that dope smoking. They didn't believe in it. Okay, so that's changed. You've got plenty of, and again, rednecks are not just found in the South. They're all over the country. You can find rednecks in Vermont. Okay, they call those swamp Yankees, but they're rednecks. Okay, so that has changed, and Team America doesn't care if you smoke pot. They really don't. Okay. Now, out of all those different worldviews that I've shown, and I've got this kind of summary page here. Out of all these worldviews here, which one do you think the devil enjoys the most? Which one entertains him the most? Interesting question. He may get a kick out of this. I think that the most general service destructive one in the world is this one, pluralism. The idea that you can believe whatever you want and you're okay as long as you believe it. I think the devil just probably really enjoys that. Okay. And I'll finish with this question. Which one are you? Which one are you? When I was 18, I was probably this, Team America. Kill them all and let God sort them out. We all hated commies back then. All right. So I'm not that anymore. I've got a Christian worldview now. But we've all got a worldview. We just may not be aware of what it is. So consider that. Ask yourself which one you are. You might be surprised. All right. That's enough of that. I'm not sure exactly what I'll have posted for you tomorrow. Tomorrow meaning Wednesday, because this is Tuesday's lesson. But check again. Check every morning. And actually, is this Wednesday's lesson? I've made so many videos today, I can't remember. I think this is, well, anyway, you'll see it. It'll be marked. I'll have them separated. Worldview, week 2, day 1. Worldview, week 2, day 2. Worldview, week 2, day 3. So just keep track, and you'll get it all sorted out. All right, well, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you again. If you have questions for me, put them on the class wall. I will check that every morning. Or since you all have my email address now, you can send me an email, and I'll try to get back to you. Thanks a lot. Bye.